go into sex without
Before you
saying
even
hello
reach
to
that
someone.
point, a man needs to exhibit other traits and qualities. Look at the music that's portrayed by black female artists. What's up, guys? We're back with another episode on the Black Diamond Podcast. And this topic is going to be about Dr. Cheyenne Bryant responding to Dr. Umar. And if you haven't checked out my previous video, the reaction on this, and I explained why someone like Dr. Cheyenne Bryant or an older woman needs to date younger men. So we're going to react to her response, and let's get into it.
And he said, okay, you're evaluating and criticizing the fact that I have 8 children by 3 different women.
Right.
And I still want more children,
Right.
even though I'm being patient in finding my mate.
Right.
But you're 41 and haven't had any children.
Damn.
To what can we attribute your behavior?
Right.
Here's the irony. Her answer to Cam was exactly Cam's answer to her. She said she was taking her time. So I'm looking at this as a psychologist, right?
Right.
And then Cam comes with another question. He says, what age or how young can your potential mate be? She mentioned 26, 27. I said, as a therapist,
I'm a
bingo.
PhD.
I said, I know why Dr. Cheyenne Bryant isn't married. Dr. Cheyenne Bryant has a fear of abandonment. And the reason why a 26, 27-year-old spouse possibly would be appealing to her is she could parentify herself in that relationship where she becomes the mommy and the mate. And in being the mommy and the mate, I'm able to coddle my young partner. And in doing so, I get to control his behavior, therefore preventing the abandonment that I fear. When I looked at her conversation with you, you asked her the same question as well.
Yeah.
Well, what about you? And she talked about how she almost jumped the broom 4 times.
She's been engaged 4 times.
So once again, my therapy lights went off, and I said, here it goes again. The reason Dr. Bryant never managed to jump the broom on those 4 occasions is because her abandonment issues that she honestly put out there are so strong that she has a tendency to want to over control her mate as a means of preventing the abandonment. And in her over control of these men who do not want to be over controlled, she either pushes them away or they leave of their own volition because they don't like the manner in which she wants to control the relationships.
What do you think about that?
I love everything he said. Everything he said. Only one correction, then I'll go into what I love about he said. One correction. I didn't say I would want a 26-year-old man. What I was saying to Cam, because he kept asking the same question,
Right.
and I was reading behind his question,
Yeah.
which the fans read also. He kept asking the age, because I'd already said as long as a man has no kids.
Right.
And he seemed very triggered by me saying a man with no kids, because that meant not him. And he deems...
Did you pick up on that?
Well, yeah, I picked up on that. And he deems me as being the kind of, aesthetically, woman that would have been, say, his type back then or now if he was single, because he's very much with his mate. And a man of high value can get whoever he wants, because you said that too.
Right.
But when you're sitting across from a woman who's high value and high functioning, and who would be, and I say this with humility, but I'm just going to say, who would be the poster card.
Women cannot be high value until they marry a man who is high value. This comes from the whole king marrying a peasant, making her a queen. But when you have a queen marrying a normal guy, he will not be elevated by her status. So essentially, a woman can never be high value because the more money she makes, the more assets she obtains, she only disqualifies more appropriate and men on her level with the more resources she gains, because she puts herself, or in her mind, she puts herself out of a value perspective for these good suitors. So a woman can never be high value until a man makes her high value.
The perfect woman per se, no kids, good looking, she's a doctor, she's educated, has her own stuff.
Right.
It's telling you no, you couldn't have me. And
You
she's
think
not
that-
just saying it, hold on.
Right.
Her no was not a no. Her no was like, absolutely not. And I'm not saying it to get you to hunt me.
Right.
I'm saying it because I'm nowhere in your jungle to be your prey.
So did you purposely say that to him to
No, he kept
make it
asking
affirmative
this.
that
No, he kept asking. So
I'm not interested in you?
No. I was just saying, I already said a man with no kids, meaning if the man is 45 or if he happens to be 30 and he has no kids, or if he is as young as 26 and he's mature with no kids, then I'm not going to say no to a 26-year-old with no kids, but yes to a 45-year-old with kids.
Really?
That really. And I understand that I would rather have patience with a younger man than have to have my values be dissipated and shattered with the man with kids, because those are values. It's called preference, which we all have a right for preferences. But let me tell you where I do love what he said.
Yeah.
Because he put the head up with a nail, the head on the nail, whatever. He was on bullseye on X marks the spot with what he was saying in my low functioning behavior. So remember I was telling you I had my own space of being low functioning in relationships, that I did a lot of work, and I still do a lot of work to maintain it. And I said I'm a hybrid. And now I am a very high functioning woman who manages my low functioning behaviors and parts that don't inflame half as much. Maybe at a 100%, they inflame maybe 20%.
Right.
What I like that he said was she gets into these relationships when she was engaged multiple times, and because of her abandonment, and abandonment is just the insecurity of being left. Love that he said that. She goes into over controlling, being dogmatic, being domineering, to, which is an illusion, control, not the man, that's the only part he was wrong at, her feelings of abandonment. Because I'm not controlling you, we're all just controlling ourselves. We're never controlling anybody else. We're controlling something that activates in us that we don't want you to activate. So I was controlling this person from moving anywhere off the mark. Because abandonment people need you to stay right here. Right where I left you, right here. That's not reality. Humans move, humans change, humans evolve. And I had to learn, which is what he's saying, how to get out of that low functioning behavior of, I need you right here. Because if you move a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, I'm gonna freak out.
Right.
Because that may mean, that movement could mean abandonment to me.
Absolutely.
So I had to work through that. That's where he's correct. But it wasn't in my mind to control the man. It was to control what he would activate in me based on his movement or behavior. Now, when I say I'm high functioning, we had this conversation earlier about me dating and in my dating space, and saying, Nick, I love that I can be traveling doing me, and if I'm dating a guy, he's traveling and doing him, and we find that intimate time to be together.
Right.
I couldn't do that 10 years ago because of what Dr. Umar said. My abandonment hadn't been worked through enough.
Right.
What I love about dating and having been single for 6 years and doing my work is, through my experiences, I get to feel my growth when I no longer get any anxiety over the guy I'm dating moving in any way he wants to move. There's so much freedom in that. And that's why I say to people, if you're in a space that's unhealthy, all it takes is one. I had to take self-inventory. I had to say, what the hell am I doing? Because I was having two things: attachment anxiety in relationships, meaning if I feel unplugged from you, anxiety, right? We unplugged, Nick. We unplugged. I don't know where you're at. Or if I didn't have control over you, my abandonment, the little girl in me would say, oh, this is about to be short-lived.
Right.
Oh, wait a minute. If you can't control it, it's going to be uncertainty. Last time things were uncertain, you were abandoned.
Yep.
So you have to identify, and be in your reality that that's what you do. And once I got into that and said, that's what I did or I do, I was able to look and say, okay, God and my therapist, how do I undo this? Because back to what I said, because this is not serving me.
Right.
Now, if it was serving me, I would have kept rolling with the punches. Let me go to one more part to wrap up. The other thing he said was either the control of me controlling my abandonment activation, not the men, but in his words, the men were either pushing the men away or they were leaving. This is what made it really hard for me to change. Not one of them was leaving. Hold on. Hold on. Let me go here. Hold on. Let me say this for the ones who are watching. Hold on. And all of them have attempted to be back, still attempt to be back, and would like to be back. But
all
let me
of my
say this.
exes too.
I believe you. But let me say this. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that to prove a point. That's what enabled me. That's why in our session that we had, our first few sessions we had, when I said, or with Cam, I think I said, a woman setting a boundary with a man who's dysfunctional not only serves her, it serves him. Because her leaving makes him think, what happened here? Let me take inventory of her and of me. They wouldn't leave. They facilitated. They facilitated my dysfunction. They facilitated whatever I came with. They still put a ring on my finger. They still wanted to be married. They still want that to this day.
Right.
It was good for me in that position.
Right.
But it wasn't healthy for me because all it did was positively reinforce my behavior.
Exactly.
So there was no consequence.
Right.
So what I had to do was get in the mirror and say, to Dr. Umar's point, this is the second wedding and the fourth engagement I called off. How do I plan on staying in a marriage forever? Even if it's only 15, 20 years. If the moment that my abandonment's inflamed, I go to control so that I can get a hold of really me, but it's you in the relationship with me.
Right.
And you're letting me control you. But at some point, I sabotage because there's no level to control. Meaning, when you let someone control you here, guess what? They raise the bar to here. And they raise the bar to here. And they raise the bar to here. So there was no level of control any man could have let me have that would have dissipated my abandonment. That's a self job. I had to detach, get in contact with what the hell I was doing.
Right.
And then come back and say, if that happens,
Right.
this is how you facilitate me. If this happens, I may need more reassurance. But I've done enough work to where I got to regulate myself. Me and a guy I was dating had a disagreement. He had already apologized. He already took accountability. And I felt myself, and this is actually just a year ago, I felt my abandonment inflame, and I was still upset, and I was still mad. And he had already did everything. It was over, Nick. The conversation's over. What he apologized for wasn't even a big deal.
Right.
And I maturely said to him, I said, baby, listen, you've done everything that you were supposed to do. Right now, it's my responsibility to regulate myself. Give me 30 minutes or so, because I have to make a cognitive decision to let this go. It ain't you. That's what high functioning is. It's baby, you did your job.
Me.
No, that's narcissism. That's different. That's different. But you know what I mean? After he shows up, now it's up to me to say, I'm going to lock in and move past this.
Right.
But our trauma, our abandonment sometimes will make it to where we can't. And if we have the awareness, we can shift it, and I regulate it, and then we're able to get back into our peace.
Well, I mean,
Let's start from the beginning. She talks about only wanting to date men with no children, and they could vary from the age range of in their 20s to in their 40s. But what really matters is the maturity level. There's one flaw with that she's really missing, and that's the fact that she is getting older herself, and that her value is diminishing over time and over time. And why that's so important is because a guy who's in his 20s, he may be on the fence about having kids, he may be on the fence about having a family. No matter what, he has the time to put off having children, where in her instance, if they both want to start a family, she has to start a family a lot sooner than he would have to start a family. And that pressure, whether she wants to believe it or not, is going to manifest itself in a way where it's going to play on the relationship and force him to make a decision very quicker than if he was with a woman who was younger than himself, who had the time to work on his time frame to start a family. Second point I want to bring up is the fact that she mentioned, the guys that she's been with still want to get with her. That is never a flex. A lot of women will try to use it as a flex, like she did in her case, where guys still want to get back with the girl. Cool, I get it. That's not a flex because that happens to most women. All right, that happens to maybe 90% of women where guys still want to mess with them. But the question is, do they want to marry you? Right? And do you want to marry them? Do you see him as a respectable man that you want to marry? And you had the option come up at least 4 times, I believe, and you said no. So those men aren't really options that you see as someone, as a husband. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they want to come back to you because you don't see those men as a husband. You don't respect them enough to want to marry them. You don't see the value in it. So whether or not they want to come back, it doesn't matter. Guys typically want to come back just for physical reasons. A lack of options, whatever it is. There's a lot of guys who would come back to the same woman because it's just easier than dating multiple women. So that's not a flex. 90% of women have more options than most guys. With social media, dating apps, and the way that dating has changed so far, the average woman has the same level of options as a high value guy. So that's just what it is. That's not really a flex. A lot of girls will try to play it off as a flex, but it's not a flex, all right? Most women have more options than the guy that they're dating. It's not really a flex. Do the guys want to actually marry you and actually go through with it and you actually see them as a partner? That's a flex. But if not, if you ain't got no ring on your finger and you're not with your guy, it's not a flex. The last point I want to bring up is all these so-called boundaries and standards she has set for herself. To a guy that has multiple options, that's just considered a headache. She talks about not wanting to control the guy. But the minute you set those boundaries, you have those expectations and those standards on this guy, and you're not in the position to have those boundaries or standards, you become a headache. You're not the youngest version of yourself. You're not in your prime anymore. And taking the time out to get on my program, you need 30 minutes. Bro, we don't want to hear that. Take your 30 minutes somewhere else. Guys with options don't want to hear that. And that's something like women need to understand. You need to get on your guy's program. He does not need to get on yours. That's going to be a headache. You're manifesting the control and the need for not wanting to get left in different ways. It may not be upfront, but you're manifesting it for sure. So I hope you guys like this episode. Subscribe to the channel. Leave me a comment what you want to see me react to next. And I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.